You probably think money is a spreadsheet game, right? Well, it's not. It's actually a dopamine game. And today, we're fixing exactly how you play it. Because honestly, the way we've all been taught to look at wealth is fundamentally broken. To prove it, let's look at this absolutely wild historical paradox.
Okay, picture this jarring contrast. On one hand, we have Ronald Read. He was a guy who fixed cars at a gas station for 25 years and swept floors at JCPenney for another 17. Very humble, very quiet life. On the other hand, we have Richard Fosconi. This guy was a Harvard-educated Merrill Lynch executive with an MBA. He was literally praised for his business savvy and leadership skills. The absolute definition of the Wall Street elite.
But here is the punchline, and it's a crazy one. When Ronald Read died back in 2014 at the age of 92, this humble rural janitor actually made international headlines. Why? Because he left behind a staggering net worth of over $8 million. And no, he didn't win the lottery. There was no secret trust fund. He just consistently saved what little he could, invested it in basic blue-chip stocks, and then he waited for decades. Meanwhile, Richard Fosconi, our brilliant finance executive, he borrowed heavily, got totally wiped out by the 2008 financial crisis, and was forced to declare bankruptcy.
The core conflict here is just fascinating to me. I mean, if managing money was strictly about intelligence and math, Fosconi should have absolutely crushed Read. But this is exactly where doing the math leads to the wrong answer. Understanding human nature, that's what gets you to right one. A genius who loses control of their emotions is a financial disaster waiting to happen. But an ordinary person with literally no financial education, they can build incredible wealth if they just master a handful of behavioral skills.
And that brings us to a huge misconception. We're taught that finance is a math-based field, right? You plug data into a formula, and the formula spits out exactly what you should do. But in the real world, financial decisions are almost never made in cold, sterile spreadsheets. They're made at the dinner table. They're made in a tense conference room. They're entirely driven by your personal history, your ego, your pride, envy, and some really odd incentives all scrambled together. But look, this isn't just about some janitor and a Wall Street executive. This psychological gap between the spreadsheet and the dinner table is the exact reason why you might be feeling anxious about your own savings right now.
See, we all go through life anchored to a set of views about how the world works. A person who grew up in poverty is going to think about risk completely differently than, say, the child of a wealthy investment banker. A person who lived through the rampant inflation of the 1970s carries a type of financial trauma that a 24-year-old tech worker just can't fathom. Every single decision people make with their money is justified by their own unique mental model of the world, even if it looks entirely crazy to outsiders. But here's the secret. No one is crazy. We're all just looking through totally different lenses.
And this is where we hit a critical pivot point. Most people actually lose money right here because they try to be perfectly rational. I'm going to show you why you should aim to be just reasonable instead in just a minute. But first, we need to completely rewire how you define success.
Okay, so here's the real aha moment. Are you ready? Wealth is not what you see. Wealth is the nice cars not purchased. It's the diamonds not bought. It's the first-class upgrade you declined. Wealth is simply financial assets that haven't yet been converted into stuff. We are constantly tricked by our environment because our brains just cannot contextualize what we can't see.
Spending money just to show people how much money you have is literally the fastest way to have less money. You absolutely must suppress the urge to show off. Take Rihanna, for example. The incredibly famous singer famously nearly went bankrupt and actually sued her financial advisor. And the advisor basically had to respond in court, "Did I really need to tell you that if you spend money on things, you will end up with the things and not the money?" It's funny, but it brilliantly illustrates the danger of confusing two vital concepts. Being rich is just about current income. That guy driving a $100,000 car, he's rich, sure, because he has the current income to make that hefty monthly lease payment. It's highly visible. But being wealthy is hidden. It is income not spent. The true value of wealth lies in offering you options, flexibility, and ultimate control over your time. Which begs a really fascinating question. Are you getting wealthy, or are you staying wealthy? Teasing this difference out is absolutely vital, because thinking you are highly rational actually leaves you incredibly vulnerable to ruinous risk. And that brings us directly to the ultimate wealth trap. Look at this stark reality for a second. Historically, 40% of companies successful enough to actually become publicly traded end up losing effectively all of their value over time. That's huge. Capitalism is ruthless. And the core reason this happens to both massive companies and everyday individuals is that getting money and keeping money are two completely distinct, entirely different skills.
Getting wealthy requires taking risks. It requires being relentlessly optimistic and constantly putting yourself out there. But staying wealthy? Well, that requires the exact opposite. It requires a healthy dose of frugality and a deep underlying paranoia that what you've made can be taken away at any moment. You have to survive. You need to avoid ruin at all costs. Because compounding, the real engine of wealth, only works if you can give an asset years and years and years to grow.
So how do we actually survive this wealth trap without turning into highly mathematical, emotionless robots? Well, we don't. We lean into this profound idea from Napoleon. You don't need to be a spreadsheet genius. You literally just need to do the average thing consistently while everyone else around you is panicking.
And this leads us right to our ultimate solution, the reasonable override. Look, you are not a spreadsheet. You're a screwed-up emotional human being, just like the rest of us. So do not aim to be coldly rational when making financial decisions. Aim to just be pretty reasonable. Why? Because reasonable is so much more realistic and you have a much better chance of actually sticking with it for the long run. And sticking with a strategy is literally the only way compounding can work its magic.
So we need to install 3 actionable psychological shifts to fix your financial software right now. First up, stop moving the goalposts. If your expectations rise faster than your results, there is zero logic in striving for more because you'll always feel exactly the same. Second, define the game you are actually playing. Are you a day trader or are you a long-term investor? Pick one. And third, ignore people playing a different game. Seriously, don't take financial cues from a teenager trading crypto for fun on Reddit if you are busy saving for a 30-year retirement.
Ultimately, your entire strategy needs a massive paradigm shift. Academic finance wants you to find the mathematically ROI-optimized strategy. I want you to find the strategy that maximizes for how well you sleep at night. If an optimal portfolio makes you panic and sell everything during a market crash, it was a terrible portfolio for you, period. Optimize for peace of mind.
Because when you strip everything else away, the true dividend of money isn't a life of luxury. It's independence. It's the ability to wake up every single morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. Having more control over your time and your options is rapidly becoming one of the most valuable currencies in the entire world.
Which brings us right back to where we started today, the humble janitor and the Wall Street genius. Our perspective on them has completely shifted now, hasn't it? Ronald Reed wasn't some mathematical financial genius. He was just a master of his own psychology. He survived because he was reasonable, he was patient, and he knew exactly what game he was playing. Richard Fuscone, he fell directly into the wealth trap, a brilliant victim of his own ego and leverage. Master your psychology, and you master your wealth. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next explainer. But before you go, ask yourself this. The next time you look at your bank account, are you optimizing for a spreadsheet, or are you optimizing for your sleep?